Don't say I'm recording now, so don't say anything wild. Stop all your racist talk, Mark.
Shit.
All right. All right. Welcome to the Action Shooting Show. Sponsored by Primer & Co. So go to primerandco.com for all your 2A apparel. We're going to jump right into it. We're going to try to keep this under an hour. Today is the Guardian After Action Report. So it's the Guardian 5K run and gun down in, is it Owen, Kentucky? I think it's
it's Owensville.
Owensville. It's the Elk Creek Gun Club. It's beautiful, beautiful facility. And this is the second year for it. Mike has run it both years. I think, Mark, did you run it last year? No. And I did not. I was going to try, and I couldn't make the schedule happen. So, but I ran it this year, and Mike ran it. So, right off the start, let's talk about the kind of, I guess, match flavor is the best way to put it. Mike, do you want to kind of go, and maybe you can talk about the differences in the match flavor from this year and last year?
So Guardian Run, both years have been focused on, I would say, respecting and remembering the sacrifices of first responders, whether they're military or this year, the funds raised went to an organization that takes care of firefighters, police, law enforcement, as well as military personnel.
I think that was Tunnels to Towers was the organization.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it was Tunnels to Towers this year, and I think last year it was 22 until Valhalla. So the match previously, I'd say, had more of a flavor similar to maybe Legion. This year, the match, a lot of the stages were based off of like movies and stuff. So there were some military-ish themes, as well as just some other general interesting film themes as well. So the match setup is they run several briefings throughout the day. And so unlike other matches where you have to show up early in the morning and be there, even if your run time is at 3 o'clock, it's a little bit more relaxed of a setup. If you're running in the morning, you get to the morning safety brief. If you're running in the afternoon, you just get to the late morning, early afternoon safety brief. Elk Creek is a functioning club for sporting clays, and so the course is spread out over their facility, and so they close down some of the sporting clay ranges and stages and allow us to use them, and then they leave others open. So while we're continuing to do our shooting and running, we have to be mindful of other guests that are also paying to be on the property. But it's an absolutely beautiful property down in Kentucky, and many people ask about the facility, and it's very nice. It's a great place to do an event like a run and gun. The terrain is very hilly, and they're fairly close together spacing. I would say for many of the people who've done a run and gun at possibly Rock Castle or have possibly run Heartbreak or Legion in the past, I would say it's kind of like one of their 10Ks, an elevation change, but compressed into a 5K course. And being understood that the 5K at a run and gun could possibly be 4 miles.
Yeah, I think it ended up being 4.5. Yeah, I'll add on, like with Mike, I'd call this a standard run and gun. There was not like, like Legion's kind of known for having the like mental aspect of it, and we'll get over it. There was one stage that had some of that, but generally it was just kind of a like run, hit a stage, shoot, run, hit a stage, shoot. There was no, maybe it's a mixture of if you've been to Legion and Heartbreak, they kind of a blend of the two. As far as Mike talking about like the property, it was beautiful. There was no like issues with other people shooting. You'd happen to run by. people shooting sporting clays, and they'd wave, and I had one of them jokingly offer me a ride that I would have loved to have taken them up on that. But that's kind of standard a lot of times. I know at Legion last year I passed people shooting sporting clays. And as Mike said, the terrain, there's a lot of, this year at least, it was a little different from last year, I guess, but a lot of it was on path. So cart path, gravel roads. You did run a little bit through some like bush hogged fields and stuff like that. So, I ran in shorts, but I pulled my socks up to try to, not get scratched up a bunch by the brush hog like trees and stuff like that. But it was, as Mike said, it was very hilly. If you weren't going up a hill, you were going down a hill. And even though we started and stopped at the same place, it felt like there was a lot more uphills than down. So, all right. So, I guess let's go to, real quick, I guess we forgot to do this, the pre-match training. So I'll kind of start on that. I did not really get a lot of pre-match training. I mean, I've been in my workout cycle for a while, but the couple weeks leading up to this, there's just been a lot going on, and I have not done a whole lot of running or rucking or any of that. So I felt a little underprepared for it. I mean, in reality, my fitness ended up being pretty good. I was fairly happy with my performance, but I definitely didn't feel like I was as on top of my training as I normally would like to be. So how about you, Mike?
So I ran into some respiratory issues that I was fighting in early July, and then about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So that definitely slowed down my ability to ruck and train. But I was fairly fortunate that all the work that Ryan and I put in for Heartbreak and then post Heartbreak had really raised my baseline fitness to be able to ruck. And so even though I was definitely not at 100% physical capability, I think that I was still able to perform at probably a decent 80%, and still was able to really enjoy the match.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing about fitness is it takes a while to get it. It takes a while to build that up, but you also don't necessarily, it takes a while to lose it. So, you miss a couple of weeks. It's not that big of a deal. You just kind of get back in and start hitting it hard, which I think is where me and Mike both are at for Legion coming up. That's probably the next big running gun. All right, so we're going to hit maybe gear we used or ran, and whether it worked out or not. I know I ran a little bit different gear than I have in the past, and I think Mike did as well, in the kind of ever-evolving that ever-evolving gear that we see in matches. So, Mike, you want to start with yours and the division you ran and all that?
So Heartbreak offers two classes. They have their lightweight class, which some matches would call it light fighter or something along that lines, and then they have an operator. It is different than Legion's operator in the fact that theirs Guardians is based off of a certain weight. So if you weigh over 130 pounds, I believe you're supposed to carry 40 pounds of dead weight. Does not count your guns. If you are under that, then you're supposed to carry 30 pounds. And it might have been higher than that. I never fall close to the lightweight, so I don't often pay attention to that threshold. So the class for the operator is what I chose to run, and I ran my traditional chest rig and ruck setup and played with a slightly different belt setup. The pistol was my standard Glock red dot, and then I ran a different carbine than normal with an 11.5 and a suppressor for a change, and that worked out pretty well.
Any first-time issue or any issues with this running a suppressor for the first time? I mean, there's definitely some, I guess, differences and things you have to consider with that.
Yes. So I did not run a cover on my suppressor, as the one that I had originally picked out was a silicone cover, and it started to tear very quickly when I used the 11.5 in a match previously a few weeks ago. And so I just decided to save the weight and just run it without. Now, for even the matches that we're doing now that tend to be a little bit lower round count because of the ammo shortage, the suppressor still gets pretty warm. And so I did get a little bit of a suppressor kiss on my leg when I was doing an unload show clear on a pistol and the rifle was slung. It did also change a little bit of how I had to do some water crossings, and I'll go into that later.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely talk about the water because that was a big difference, something new for a lot of running gunners. As far as my gear, I ran in I think it's the light category because my knees don't like when I do a ton of weight, so I don't want to push that too much in a match. I ran my 16-inch AR that I built earlier this spring, and I kind of built it for run and gun. I have an 18-inch that I've used in the past, but it tends to be a little long and heavy, and it's a fixed stock, and I like it for 3-gun, but with running plates in some of these matches, I needed something with a collapsible stock. So I did run the 16-inch rifle that I built. Ran my regular chest rig. I've got an RDR gear, kind of micro chest rig, similar to like the Haley or the Spiritus. And maybe the newest thing, and I kind of brought it out here, I ran my first red dotted gun. So I've had this staccato for a little bit, and I just got this red dot milled, or got it milled and a red dot put in the chambers mount. And so this was the first match with a red dot. I am absolutely glad. I didn't have a lot of time on it. I'm still not as quick as acquiring the dot as I would like. But a lot of the pistol work in this match was it helped to have a red dot. You could certainly, like, I would have shot everything with the iron sights all right, but there was definitely some precision shooting in a couple of them, some maybe smaller plates or even medium-sized plates that just started to get out a little bit further, that having that dot kind of sped things up. And maybe we'll talk about the stages in a little bit, and I'll kind of mention how that came in. And then I was, the only thing really different, I did run in shorts because it was hot and there was water, and I didn't want to have all my pants soaking wet, so I joined the Jorts Run and Gun Club. So I guess, Mark, you got any questions for us with what's going on here? Anything you want to interject?
No, I guess maybe you could be clear about what would it take for a dot gun to not be helpful. I think that we've kind of joked here and there about dot guns a long time, and it would have to be pretty much straight up closed paper for a dot to not help you, right?
Well, I will tell you one thing, is if you were going to do a water crossing and you did not have a good way to cover that up, we'll discuss it later. You did have to completely get in water, and I know 1 or 2 dots did not make it through that swim. Now, I think that'd be more of an argument towards which dots you pick as opposed to which you don't, because some are going to do better than that. But no, there's really not. I say that there's not really a time where a dot's not an advantage. There's just times where a dot is a bigger advantage. For, like, instance, there was a 125-yard pistol shot we'll mention later. Having a dot is a huge advantage, whereas some of the other stages, if you put steel at 10, 15 yards, it's kind of, 8-inch, 10-inch steel plates. Yeah, dot's faster, but like a good iron sight shooter can keep up just fine. And, for me, I was kind of up in the air with it because I'm still getting used to a dot, and that does take a little bit of time. So, yeah, besides for the getting used to it, I think they're always an advantage.
Yeah, well, it's run and gun. Where are you going to find a good iron sight shooter? Moving on. So would you want to talk about obstacles, or do you want to jump into the stages? Because you've mentioned a bunch about going through water, which doesn't make any sense to me because it's run and gun. It's not a triathlon. So I don't get why you guys would be doing anything in water other than like a creek crossing or something like that.
Well, yeah, let's I kind of had something about obstacles, but I think we should go into those as they revolve around the stage. They kind of use something as a trend I've seen in a lot of run and gun that seems to be happening more, which is giving you physical task to do right before you shoot a stage. So if running isn't enough, if you got the guys that are like walking through the match and they're like, hey, I'm not going to run, cool. When you get to the stage, they still want your heart rate up. And so there's still things to do. And they kind of spread those out. It was, so what we'll go into that. The first stage, he started, ran up a little hill, ran down a hill, kind of around the back of this pond, there's a little uphill there. It wasn't too bad. And you got to the stage called Deadpool. So as Mike mentioned earlier, it was movie themed for almost all the stages. This was apparently a scene where, and I don't watch movies, I haven't seen any of these, but where he only has one bullet, and so he shoots through somebody to shoot somebody else. So the way it was set up, you had I think 5 pieces of steel that were kind of open that you shot from a box. And then your last shot, you had a wooden silhouette, and there was a hole cut out in the head. Through that, you could see a steel plate behind it. So you had to shoot through that, hit the steel plate, then you move to another box, shot those same 5 targets again, and then through a different head. It was, I guess you'd say, Virginia count. So you could only take, or how did they word that in it? Missing was a very big penalty. So you needed to go 1 for 1 basically on everything. I did not. I missed. I shot, missed, hit the next one, missed, hit the next one. So I dropped 2 shots the whole time before I remembered that I can't beat the trigger like it owes me money. So and I think that was a 90-second penalty, but it was a 90-second penalty if you missed 1 or you missed all of them. So, but they didn't tell you that at the time. They told you that afterwards. So we'll get into scoring later. It wasn't real happy with that, but it was a fun stage. Just my shooting at that point was not something I was real proud of. Anything else you want to add to that, Mike?
Only that you need to watch that movie.
I'll see what I can do. There's a couple of them, right?
Yeah.
It's got the guy from 2 Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Parlor, correct? Is that pretty sure?
Wow. 2 Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Parlor?
Yeah. That's probably before your time. You guys are too young. All right. So the next stage that we ran to was Saving Private Ryan. And this is one that definitely had...
Have you seen this movie before? Because we're going to cut this off right now if you haven't.
I have seen this movie. And I believe we watched the beginning of this movie on the way back from Rockcastle once in my truck. So, before watching a better movie. Yeah, so Mike, do you want to explain this one?
Yeah, so this was a really interesting one. You started with a physical challenge where you had to drag a weighted sled, and then once you carried it a certain distance, drug it a certain distance, you had to pick the weights up out of it, carry them, sit down, and pull a rope to return the sled to the starting position. Once you did that physical activity, then they had you go over, load and make ready, and engage 2 handgun targets. Once you had engaged and neutralized the 2 handgun targets, they had a tower to shoot clays off of. And so you needed to go over and run up, I believe, was it 4 flights of steps?
It was probably 4, yeah, because it went up, the tower went up higher, but I think it was almost all the way up.
Yeah, and then once you were up there, you loaded and made your rifle ready, and you engaged, I believe it was 4 rifle plates that were probably about, 3 rifle plates that were probably around.
It was 4 rifle plates, and you engaged them 3 times for a total of 12 hits.
Yeah, and those were probably, what would you say, 100-ish yards, 120 yards?
Yeah, and not only so you're shooting down from the tower, but they're down kind of in a hill, a little gully. So it was pretty extreme angle down that you're shooting at, which made it interesting.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of had an interesting thing with the prop where the weights got stuck, so I couldn't pick them up and pull them out, and so then I had to drag the sled back to its starting position with some of the weight still in it. So that was an interesting little prop malfunction to fight through, but I don't believe it had really any effect on my performance. So the interesting thing when you come into a challenge like that is the handgun was not that difficult, but you are going to put some serious distance to get to the rifle position, and you're doing it on your shooting clock. So, yes, you need to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, but we all understand how flights of steps can affect your heart rate, especially after you've had the beep of doom and you've already used one gun. So, I definitely tried to make sure that when I was going up those steps, I didn't let my heart rate get away from me. And then I was able to get into the position, and different people chose to engage those targets differently. I chose to stand and brace my rifle off the railing, and I know some shooters attempted to do a prone or kneeling through the railing. Others used some of the upright bracing on the tower, but there was a lot of options. But I chose just to come off the steps, charge the rifle, and just go straight there and start engaging the targets. I know I dropped probably two shots, but I was able to move it through pretty quickly. That is where I got my first hot suppressor kiss, though, when I was doing an unload on the rifle, and then I let it fall to the sling position and went to do an unload on my pistol. And I felt something pretty warm, but luckily I was able to move my leg away and only got a small welt, no blister or anything. But that was a valuable lesson learned for me, and I'll probably be looking for some sort of lightweight suppressor cover that would be durable enough for running gun. So that was my run on the stage. Ryan, how did yours go?
Yeah, so, and I don't know if Mike said it. So the 2 pistol targets earlier, and this was kind of the theme, you had to shoot them twice, but they weren't letting you double tap them. So you have to shoot like plate 1, plate 2, plate 1, plate 2. And then, like you said, he run up the tower, 4 flights. And like I did similar as Mike. I'm trying to move up it quick, but I'm also not like sprinting at like max effort because I don't want my heart rate just to peg, through the roof. And, I'm making sure I'm getting really good deep breaths. I got up there and my heart rate felt pretty good. I actually did something similar to Mike, but I went to the far right hand where there was an upright pole, and I kind of hunkered myself down against that pole with my gun. And I think I missed, I dropped maybe 2 shots, and it was mostly just, you're transitioning and you're just kind of getting that flash sight picture when you need to be aiming a little bit better. I forget where I ended up. I know I was 108 or something like that, and some of the faster times. I know Mike had a little bit faster time. I think the faster times were like 95 seconds. So I kind of had a mental blunder at the beginning of it, and thought I put a new trigger in. That's a double 2-stage, and I started pulling, and I was like, oh, that should have broke, because I usually have a single stage in that gun. And then I thought, oh, I didn't take the safety off. No, the safety's off. So I racked the gun and freaking racked a round out, and I just didn't pull the trigger quite enough. So that cost me a little bit of time. But yeah, that was definitely a fun stage. And you get that balance, you got to move quick, you got to do things fast, but you can't do it so fast. I mean, if you get up there and your heart rate's 190, trying to get on a scope and shoot something, you know, at an extreme angle down, and the scope, that's the other thing. I zoomed up at one, and I was like, oh, I need more zoom, and I zoomed too far, and I probably should have just stayed at one, and that slowed me down a little. But yeah, that was a fun stage. So from there, ran down, did a little bit more running through the woods. Seemed like there was another hill, and you got to Extraction. This stage, I'm trying to remember all this. You started with a sandbag that you had to drag around. You drug it to a position with pistol plates, and you shot, what was it, like 5 or 6 pistol plates, Mike?
I believe that there was 3 pistol plates at each position.
Okay, and then you had multiple. So you'd shoot some, drag it, go to another position, shoot some more pistol. Did we hot holster in that stage too?
Yes.
So you hot holstered, then you had to take the sandbag that was, it was probably at least 50 pounds, but you had a tube, like a, I don't know, 3-foot diameter tube that you had to drag this through to get to the other side with your rifle and everything. And then once you got there, you were kind of done. At this point, you were done with the sandbag, and then you had some rifle shooting to do. And it was offhand. It was stuff that, you know, I think there was 4 or 5 of them that progressively got further away. You know, the closest one was probably 50 yards, and the furthest one, or maybe 30, 40 yards, and the furthest one was like 70. Like, they weren't hard shots, but you've been dragging a 50-pound sandbag for a minute now, so, or however long. So that was, again, you know, they're adding this physical stuff in. It's challenging, but it's not impossible physical stuff, which I thought the weights they used, at least for someone my size, seemed pretty reasonable throughout the match. Would you agree, Mike?
Yep, I'd say the weights were reasonable. When you're coming into a stage like that, you often have to consider how you're going to tackle it. It was one of them where they made me shoot with my ruck on. So certain stages they let you drop ruck, others they forced you to shoot with it. So not only did I have my ruck, but I also had the sandbag. And since I was going to be moving with a pistol, I know certain people picked up the bag. I decided just to grab it by one of the handles and drag it from box to box. And then when I was done engaging the pistol targets, I set my rifle on top of the sandbag and then pushed the bag and the long gun through the tube in front of me. And then I was able to get through, climb over the bag, stand up, make the rifle hot, and engage.
Yeah, and see, for me not having a bag, I took that sandbag at the beginning of the tube. My rifle was slung on my back, and I basically just like tossed it as far as I could in there, and it got, you know, a third halfway through, and then did the same thing as Mike, got behind it and just kind of pushed it through and crawled over it. The ROs were taking some pictures. There's a pretty good picture of me. I thought it was a fun stage. I didn't think it was that hard, but this picture of me is me like coming out of the tube, and like the look on my face just looks like I've died inside. I mean, it looks like there's way more effort being put in than I really thought that I was doing. So, yeah, well, anything you want to add to that or ask Mark?
Nope, I think you guys covered it. Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. So next one, you actually had, this was a good hill that we went up. It was, I say good, in that it was pretty darn steep, and it seemed to never end. And you actually had gone through a little valley, and then you're going up this back hillside. And I ended up fidgeting around. I was trying to get my rifle set up and get mags all squared away. And the scope I'm using is Mike's. I ended up knocking his scope cap off where he found it later on in the match. So I was lucky to have that. But you get to the top of the hill, and there is the American Sniper stage, which I think was one of maybe my favorite stage of it. It was super simple. Well, it was my favorite stage because I succeeded at it. I think a lot of people it probably wasn't, because I think the whole weekend 5 people made hits on the target. So to lay it out, you have like an elevated roof, and it was a fairly tame elevation, not real steep, maybe 15 degrees or something. And above it, there was a roof, and then like ghillie cloth type, netting in front of it to kind of simulate a sniper's hide. There's a little cutout in it for your rifle and your optic to see through. A front on it. So the stage was simple. You had one target that you had 30 seconds to shoot, and you only got 2 shots. So you got 2 shots, you got 30 seconds to get it off in. And the catch to it was that the target was, I think the RO said he lasered it at 530 yards. I didn't look like a full-size silhouette, so not tiny, but at 530 yards, that's a pretty good poke for what most people are using 5.56 in this. So I know I had a first round hit on it. I know Mike, was yours a first round hit as well?
Yep.
So yeah, we were the one of the 5 to get it, and they told you if you ask, that was part of it. You could ask as many questions as you want. You could get settled in, take your time, and then find the target, and then tell the RO and find it again. And he'll, if you say, "Hey, how far is that target?" He's going to tell you. So that was kind of maybe a mental trick they did that they didn't tell you in the stage brief, but as long as you asked, you knew. So knowing that, I dialed and was able to just hold dead on. And the wind, I think, cooperated a little bit for me. It wasn't real crazy. Yeah, that was a very interesting, simple stage, but definitely challenged people. So you want to add anything, Mike?
Yep. That is definitely one of those things where always ask the ROs. Don't be so focused on trying to blow through the stage or something where you compromise your shooting performance for 5 or 10 seconds of runtime. Because I talked to so many people that that didn't even occur to them. They didn't think about talking to the ROs, and I asked, and they gave me the exact distance, and I was very fortunate with the loads that I was running in that 11.5 that I had a perfect BDC line, and so I was able to hold there. But I mean, if not, I would have had time to look up and actually, check stray lock on my runtime, and okay, 30 seconds to pull out a phone and get real live dope for a distance, or completely bomb a stage. Think outside the box.
Yeah, and the way that they did it, I thought was smart. The RO's explaining it, and he said, "Feel free to ask as much as you want." So they didn't tell you the distance, but the RO in it kind of was like hinting, like, "Hey, ask as much as feel free to ask whatever questions you need." So that was one of them. I ended up using, which really helped. I had my backpack, hydration pack, which I put down. And I even, at most of these matches, if I'm carrying a backpack, I bring a rear bag now. So I even had a rear bag. So I set my barricade stop on the front of that wood. And once I got that rear bag and everything, I was locked in probably more steady than even shooting at benches sometimes. So, like Mike said, it's one of those, so what, I dicked around with that stuff for 30 seconds to a minute or something like that, really getting comfortable. But to have a time in the top 5 or whatever was well worth it. So that was kind of an interesting one.
Ryan, did you have to dial or look at any sort of dope charts, or did you just have a similar situation where you could pull out a phone and kind of figure it out?
I had an idea that there was going to be some longer shots, and so I just kind of knew a couple of my where to go. So, generally, so once I knew the distance, I just dialed to that. So, because that distance ended up being kind of middle of 2 of my Stadia lines, so it just seemed easier just to dial. So,
Well,
but
I'm just taking away that BDC works really well, and then sort of MOA maybe not so good, but you have to dial. Just kind of from this chat.
Well, no, I had a mill reticle, so.
Well, I know,
So
but
for our
you should
listeners,
I mean,
for our
really,
listeners, someone in this chat has been chasing a load to match their BDC, and they're looking for some validation.
yes, yeah.
I'm sure that the viewers can figure it out. But in my case, with the drop on the optic I was using, it was meant for a 20-inch barrel gun shooting a 55 grain load. So the BDC looks nothing like it's supposed to with an 11.5-inch barrel pushing a 77 grain load. So I got very fortunate to have a BDC line that worked. And I know some people will actually look at their phone for dope pre-stage. I generally will either write it on the stock or affix it to my optic, or like Armageddon Gear makes these little like dry erase Velcro placards that you can put on your gear, and you can write your dope on that. So there's lots of good ways, if you don't want to carry a phone, to be able to carry dope with you while you're running. On your gun is a great way, or on your kit for a quick reference is another.
Right. So I want to make a joke, but what Mike just said is what I was actually looking for, is that, there is a need for this idea of shooting beyond 400 yards, because we think it's funny to push a 223 that far. And so knowing either by having the app or by having a dope chart or by being able to dial or knowing your BDC or mill or MOA, that makes sense, and it's valuable in these sort of situations. And while it was only one shot, now that's a huge leg up if you were struggling on a different stage. If you were number 5, not if you're even the fastest, you were the 5th guy that just made that hit. You had a huge leg up on literally everybody else. So I'm going to make the joke, but also it's something, if you've made it this far and you're still listening for something valuable, there's a lot of different ways to get that information and make it work for you in the actual event.
Yeah, I agree, because that's the best reticle is the one that you know how to use, plain and simple. And sometimes that's a BDC. I think like me and Mike tend to gravitate towards mill now, but it's whatever you use. I mean, I was shooting 55 grain reloads that were like 2850. So like I doubt there's a reticle out there designed for 55 grain at 2850. It's pretty slow for that. I mean, I think I was barely, I'm towards the transonic at 500 yards, but I knew my hold, and that was kind of the important part. So we'll move on. Let me get my notes out here. The next stage was, actually the next stage from there was not really a shooting stage. It was the pond, what we've been alluding to this whole time. The MDs alluded to it, talking about going for a swim, make sure your gear's waterproof, yada, yada, yada. And we're all like, is this fake intel or what's going on? No, they had a little pond there. They have a dock. They had a line going from one end of the dock to the shore. And as you came up on it, there was harnesses, and you had to get in the water and cross. A lot of people handled it a lot of different ways. Some people, which this is the quickest way, dove right in, swam across with their gear, called it a day. I think me and Mike took similar routes, maybe doing it a little bit differently. I brought a construction plastic bag, and I literally took all my gear off and stuffed it, everything but shirt and pants, and stuffed it in there. I broke my AR in two, then I wrapped paracord on that bag, attached it to the little carabiner that was on the line, and swam it across that way. So when I got across, took the bag open, it managed to keep everything pretty darn dry. And I mean, I took my shoes and socks off. I wasn't running there. If I'm gonna bag it, I'm gonna bag everything. So I had a towel. I dried off my feet. I had dry feet and socks and dry gear. So it was a gamble because I took a time. If you didn't do the pond at all, it was a 15-minute penalty. So I don't really know how long I took. If I took 10 minutes, I saved 5. I don't know if it was worth it. Having said that, the next 3 stages after that, I had all top 10 finishes. I had like 2 top 10s and a 6 or 8 or something like that. And some of the ROs were saying that they had people come into their stage with red dots that weren't working, that had single shot guns because they were hydro locked. Magazines were locked up. And these are not like, I'm using a race gun, a 1911, 2011. They're supposed to jam on everything, but these are Glocks and M&Ps and like polymer guns that have so much water stuck in them that the firing pin's not hitting or they're not cycling and that sort of thing. So you kind of had to weigh that out. You had to know what your gear did. So anyone want to add that?
Yeah, Ryan and I did a similar method. I was doing the weight class, so by taking heavy trash bags and double bagging my ruck, then dropping my pistol, shoes, and chest rig in, I was able to pretty much keep everything dry. The only thing that did not get in the dry bags were my rifle, because I was running a suppressor and it was still a little warm from the previous stages, and I was worried about melting the plastic bag material and causing it to fail. So I just put that slung across my back and hope that the good engineers and manufacturing folks at Steiner and Trijicon knew what they were doing when they were putting together their optics. And so I was careful putting the suppressor on my back to not burn myself, and used a drag line. And the reason I used a drag line with about 20 foot is if something would happen and my kit goes to the bottom, I don't want it to drag me to the bottom, and I also want to be able to retrieve it from the bottom. So having a long drag line is kind of insurance, so to speak. They had a safety line that stretched, but it wasn't taut enough to keep gear out of the water. But I still put an umbilical cord from my bagged ruck to there to try to keep it from sinking to the bottom if the bags would fail. And I swam across, and the good folks at the optic manufacturers did their job. So I was able to get out and have a bunch of dry equipment like Ryan, and I made sure to clear my rifle, rack the bolt, open the optics covers and everything to make sure that rifle was as dry as possible.
Yeah, and I should add, they had, I guess you'd say, a safety person there. One of the MDs was stationed there the whole time. So if something would have happened, he was there and had the ability to help rescue people. So they're not just turning people loose in the water and saying, hey, hope you don't drown. But, Mike makes a good point, because I don't know how deep it was, but they're really, until you got within like 4 or 5 feet of the shore, you couldn't touch the ground. So it was definitely deep enough that you had to swim. You weren't just walking your gear across.
Yeah, and there's 2 takeaways we've had from other matches that when it talks to getting your gear wet and possibly losing it. We watched a team at the Wolverine Challenge that we did a few months ago lose all their kit because it wasn't secured to their canoe. I can't imagine the financial loss that was incurred by that team. And then also quality lubricant is a big thing, because if your guns get wet, I've seen it at Legion, where some of the nicest guns and things considered combat grade by many Americans, and they look at duty grade guns go down because of lubrication issues. So make sure you're running a high quality lubricant that is got some staying power if you're going to be out in the rain or if the weapon will be submerged. And I always carry a small container of lube with me on the run.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we've, Mike talking about like trusting the optics company, we've gotten these guns really wet. So, I had less concerns about optics and stuff failing, but at the same time, completely submerging your gun comes with risk. I mean, it only takes just a little bit of, a leak in your seal. You got a little speck of dust in your cap that your battery tray has, and they can get wet. So it was an interesting challenge, and it seemed to work out pretty well. I was maybe a little skeptical of it at first, and it wasn't I don't know I want to do one in every match, but it ended up better than I was expecting it. I'll put it that way. So next, we'll kind of keep going through this. The Born Identity. So you came out of that. You went up a hill, kind of down a hill. You could pretty much follow the path because there was wet footprints and stuff the whole way on the concrete. This was a really short little stage. They had a stage gun. You had a little over-under shotgun. 2 clays that launched across a little pond. They give you the beep. You yell pool. The first one go across. You break it. Second one go across. You break it. And then once that was done, you emptied it out, stowed it next to you, and then you had a, what was it, Mike, 45-ish, 50-yard pistol shot? Maybe not that, 35 yards?
To 60 yards.
Okay.
I would say it was probably closer to 50 to 60. I know I definitely overestimated the distance at first and fired a few unnecessary rounds because of it.
But yeah, all you had to do was get a single hit on it. But like he says, a little bit further, and you just got done swimming and running up and down hills, and there's a little railing there I kind of braced on. I think I got it my second shot. But kind of short stage, but a fun stage. So I don't know if there's much more to say about that one.
Just enjoying sporting clays to get practice, because this is the third running gun that I've shot, or a teammate has had to shoot aerial clays. So be well-rounded. And running gunners mostly hate shotguns, so I think it's great. As a 3-gunner, I usually do fairly well on it. I only got one of the 2 clays this weekend, but I guess that was still more than a lot of people. So you do a little bit more running. Somewhere in this point, I believe we start getting to the infamous ladders. The MDs at Guardian, in their wisdom, would find 2 trees next to each other, and they would say, that looks like a great place for a ladder. And so they'd string boards across it, and not your normal spacing for a ladder, but closer to 2 or 3 feet. So you've really got to reach up, and it's like a deep lunge getting up there. It sucks, and they've got those spread out throughout the course. I think this is about the time you start hitting those, because you actually go up a hill kind of behind the pond, and it's off trail now, and it's a little more rugged. But you wind through that, and you get to Tombstone. This was another stage with some physical activities before it, in the form of a, 4 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot log with a decent diameter that you had to move from one place to the other and then move it back. Not impossible. I drug it. I kind of grabbed it and drug it back and forth. And apparently at that point in the day, I was the first one to do that. Everyone else was flipping it. I don't know whose was smarter, but I felt like that was a fast way to do it. Then you got your gun hot. This was pistol only. And you started, there was a wall. You had to get down, you had to get prone, and you had to put 2 shots on the steel from underneath the wall. Then you stood up, walking down a path that have 3 targets that you had to shoot the steel targets on the move. So you had to continue to move. You couldn't stop, and you had to shoot those 3 before you got to a specific line. And then same thing with the next. You did 3 stations of that. 3, then you could get to the next one. 3, the next 3, and then you ran forward, and there was one more. You could stop there, but there's one more steel kind of off to the right. You couldn't see till the end. It was a fun stage. I shoot and move fairly well, so I would kind of get my nice, smooth walk and ping, ping, ping. Once I hit that, I'd run to the next line that you could start shooting from, and then same thing, ping, 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 and kind of head through. I had a pretty good stage time on that. So anything else you want to add or you remember about that, Mike? Yeah, so just when doing stuff that makes you either go prone or lay down or something with a handgun. Just watch your muzzle. That's something that I've seen guys DQ. And so I explained to the RO before the beep even went off, my plan, how I was going to get down, how I was going to engage, and then how I was going to get up. And, that's one of those things where it was on my run time. It took 5 seconds, but the RO understood what I was going to be doing with the gun. And then sometimes if you say it out loud, you might catch yourself doing something stupid. So it was just one of those things of think through the stage before you get into it. Kind of like when you climb those ladders out there with the weight, you got to think through before you execute the obstacle. Otherwise, you could get yourself in a bind. And if you're doing it with weight, it's way less forgiving.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll say the other thing is like with Mike's talking about, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get down. My gun's going to be pointed here. The RO may say, oh, no, your gun can't point that way. That's not the 180, or something like that. With run and gun and these natural terrain stages, 180s aren't always as obvious. Like safe directions aren't as obvious as a bay. So I think that's a good point. You do explaining that may save you a trip to the Dairy Queen after the match. So, is there any questions you've had, Mark?
No, I think you guys have covered it really well.
All right. So we continue on through the woods. We've got more of the ladders. Actually, at this point, a little bit before the last stage, and there were 7 stages of the match, there was the tallest of the ladders, and they actually had like a auto belay system with it because it was pretty tall. I mean, I would say 20 or 30 feet. Does that sound right, Mike?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely up in probably the 15, 20-foot range. It's probably out of all the obstacles I've done and all the different races, it's the one that with weight is the most concern to me, even above swimming with it, just because even with an auto belay system, carrying weight up and over it, and they're not true climbing harnesses. We're just hooking onto our riggers belts and things like that. It's a terrible price to pay if you slip. So that goes back into what I was talking about of looking at an obstacle, plan your route, and make sure that you can do it. Because it's definitely tough. And if you come into a match where you're doing anything with ropes or belaying, even if it's not a running gun, just be very mindful of each move. I know that I've done some high ropes courses and rock wall type stuff as a teenager. And so being around some auto belays and things like that in the past, I noticed very quickly when the line started wrapping around my torso and stuff in ways that it shouldn't. But everyone's not familiar with these things. So plan your routes out. Make sure you're executing a safe line of travel through the obstacles.
Yeah, I wasn't running with weight. The other thing about this particular ladder, the trees were really narrow, so it didn't quite give you as much room to work with. Which, yeah, I mean it was kind of narrow. I didn't use the auto belay system. Halfway up, I kind of regretted that because like just getting over the top. I mean the spacing of it. It wasn't just like you get up there and you can throw your leg over really good. And I was kind of cramping up at that point. So that was probably the sketchiest thing I've done in a match. It was fun, and I see the thing. I kind of hope they don't get too crazy in the future with it because I worry someone may get hurt because that's kind of a there was someone kind of in the woods at the same time as me, and I even asked. I said, "Are you all right to get over? You want me to hang around?" And he's like, "No, I'm good." But you don't want to come up on someone that's falling off a height like that. So it's kind of interesting, but I hope it doesn't get too much higher than that because that could hurt someone. So.
Well, couldn't you say the same thing about swimming too? Like, you assume that everyone knows how to swim, but that's not a fair assessment.
Yeah, and I had that concern. They did have an RO there, a safety person, and also you could have just grabbed onto that line and drug yourself across if you couldn't swim. And you also had the option to just take a 15-minute penalty hit. So if you can't swim, 15 minutes is a pretty good trade-off to drowning. If you gave me that, I'd take that bet.
What was the
So
penalty for not doing the ladders then?
so that's a good question, and I don't know. And I
Was
don't
anyone
know that
watching them?
they were not. And I don't.
So you could have
This
just walked right by them. So this
you
is a
could
classic
have.
run and gun issue.
This,
Okay.
yes, and that is, if I had a complaint about running guns, and I think everyone has, for the most part, everyone's got integrity. And there's one more kind of scoring thing I'll mention at the next stage that someone had a comment about, but. I got to the end and they took my name for my final time, but nobody asked me, hey, did you do all the obstacles? Did you do all the ladders? So even if you wanted to tell someone, no one asked. I mean, if you didn't think about it, you wouldn't know. So you did get a poker chip when you went through the water. So that's how at the end they knew if you went through the water or not. But that's one of those competitive equities. We're kind of all in the honor system, but some people are more honorable than others. And in this case, even if you didn't mind telling someone that you didn't do it, no one really was asking, or I don't know that they had a way to penalize it. So that's a good point, and maybe something match directors of running guns should really consider, going forward if they care. So we'll keep scooting along. There's more woods. This whole section we've been talking about is kind of up and down deer trails and through woods. You went up after that. You kind of went up this brush hogged hill that was it was probably one of the harder parts of the match for me. I mean, you're pretty winded and worn at this point, and I was dragging pretty hard coming up that hill. At the top of the hill, you had the last stage. This was Guardian Brainbuster. So this one was a tough stage, and it was more mental than physical. You had 2 VTAC boards. The first VTAC board was rifle only. You had a target down a hill, kind of extreme angle, at 125 yards. You had ports with letters on them. You had to spell, so 2 hits on the target, so double taps, from each letter, and you had to spell out Guardian. So Guadian. They had 2 A's. The kind of running joke with the RO is that there are 2 A holes, and you have to penetrate both of them. But
Brian,
and
you
it's
missed the R. Start over. Start
the
over.
R.
Say it
The
again.
R.
I feel like you spelled it wrong. Maybe we'll have to rewind it back. But
Well, here. Surprise for you. I spelled it wrong in the match as well. So the second board had, as they explain it, you shot the ports. There was a single target at 25 yards, and you shot the ports in ascending order by number. That's all they told you. So you go, you shoot Guardian, yada, yada. You finish ends on the ground. So you ground your gun on the ground. You go over the other one, and you're expecting 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's 78, 116, 148, 97, all these. And you're trying to quickly look. You're racing the clock. It's 180-second par time. And you're trying to pick the right ones. Surprise, I can't count any better than I can shoot, or I can spell and probably shoot. So I butchered both of those. The silver lining is that if you messed up the spelling or the counting on either of them, it was a single 30-second penalty. After you got done with all that, you had the opportunity, and this is on your run time off the shoot time, they had that rifle target at 125 yards. So standing between the 2 VTAC boards, you had 1 pistol shot to hit that 125-yard target, and then it was a 2-minute bonus. So 2 minutes off of your run time. And so I can't spell, but I can at least shoot a target at 125 yards. So what we were talking about earlier. So when you did that, they gave you 2 little cards. There was a red card that you gave at the end that was supposed to be your penalty for the 30-second penalty. And then a blue card, a blue or tan or something, I forget, that was your 2-minute off. So kind of one of my problems with that is that 30-second red card, if you didn't have the blue card, you may completely forget that's in your bag or choose not to give it, and then you're not penalized for that. One of the competitors actually asked the RO, what happens if I just don't give it to him? And I thought it was one of the match directors. I thought he had the greatest answer. He said, your integrity is not worth 30 seconds. And that is probably true for most people, but maybe not true for everybody. So, that's something that there maybe should have been a way just to toss that in practice score at the time. But yeah, so Mike, I actually got to watch Mike shoot this one. He had a pretty good time on it. You want to talk any about it?
So while I had a decent time, my spelling went south partway through Guardian. I tried to spell it out loud as I went. And, it was interesting. They had you firing 2 rounds through each port. And I think my spelling would have been fine if it was a single round. But your mind going through the recoil and the second shot process is just enough time away from that last letter that you said or thought that when you come back out of the port, you're trying to re-engage that other task. I thought of several ways that I could have and should have gained that, but hindsight's 2020. I enjoy those type things, and I'm glad that they didn't make the penalty too unbelievable. But I think those stages definitely have a place in a match. I'm not sure if the place is the very last stage of the day, but they definitely do belong in a match.
Yeah, and so they had a couple ROs back out at the last minute. So they actually only had one RO on that stage, which it kind of is what it is. It was not a great situation for him. So when I finished my run earlier in the day, I actually went out there to help so that he wasn't there by himself. And so I got to see a lot of people run through this. And I will say, to do it fast and do it right, like the fastest guy did, was definitely the strategy. But I saw a lot of people who really focused, I think, too hard and ended up timing out before getting everything done and ended up with like a 180-second par time, plus sometimes they would screw up the spelling along with it. So you've got 30 seconds plus 180. That is not as good as my 145 seconds and a 30-second, or whatever the time was, 145. But so there's a balance, like everything in shooting, we're trying to do things fast, and sometimes we make mistakes, and what do you want to do? So you could definitely think too hard on the cognitive part and lose the shooting part. And actually, I saw a ton of things that I think we're going to do a whole episode on shooting barricades, because I saw a lot of mistakes that I've seen in a lot of other matches. So I think that's probably a good topic to talk about. So that's the last thing. You finish up with kind of a pedestrian run. It's on trails. It's the hills aren't too bad. It was kind of an uneventful ending of the match, which was nice because you're pretty smoked by that point. Anything you want to talk about with the run or the stages, Mike, before we go on to scoring and some other stuff?
I'll just say that the run this year was a little bit easier and easier to pace yourself than last year. Last year, it was a lot of brush hogged paths and deer trails. And so it was difficult to make time. It was just a constant battle. And it actually, even as a 5K, between that and the train, gave me the highest heart rate of any running gun I've ever done. This year, with the combination of the trails and some of the training and stuff that I've done, I went from having one of the worst heart rates that I've ever had at a running gun to one of the better heart rates I've ever had. And so just always have some idea of the progress that you've made in your training as well. Slightly off topic, but I'll just throw it out there. But they did a great they did a great job with the Guardian 2.0, and I really look forward to seeing what they do next year and partaking in that.
Yeah, same for me. Mark, did you have any questions or anything before we go on?
Nope, I think you guys hit it all.
Okay, so the next thing, I'm going to present this. This is constructive criticism. This isn't necessarily these match directors alone. Some of this is things I've seen at a couple run and guns, but it did happen here. Scoring was a little unclear and confusing at times. I don't know how much of that was intentional to prevent gaming or what, like the first stage, whether you missed one shot or you missed all of the shots, it was the same 90-second penalty. And I don't know how I feel about that. We mentioned the like little cards that you have to take in that maybe someone will forget or on purpose not turn in. The obstacles, if you don't do them, what's it? And then maybe a bigger thing is, and this is somewhat of a practice score thing, when you look in the results with practice score, it's really hard to tell who won, what the thing is. I mean, I don't know if this will kind of show up, but I mean, you've got run plus shoot, which is what I would think would be the final results. But then you have run only, and that's run and gun results. Then you have shooting results, which has a bunch of the stages, and each of these have like review, combined, open, division. You've got class leaders, category leaders, view individual results. It's just, there's a lot of, we don't know at this point. I think they're going to clarify and do like a Gun Stuff TV announcement as to like final scores and who won what. As of right now, it kind of looks like Mike Ford won the operator class, and I think maybe I got 6th or 7th place, which would be my highest finish to date, but it's a little confusing. So some of that's practice scores, some of that is just that these run and guns don't have a lot of written rules and kind of standards, and so each one of them is a little different, but it's a little hard to gauge your progress. I don't, if any you guys want to add something or just make me the bad guy in this.
Brian, it seems like you'd like a governing body, perhaps some
Abs-
rules that
abs-
you want,
ab-
just
Read my lips.
who was going, maybe perhaps how each range would go, what they would say. I mean, if we could just have something like that, maybe even specify the guns.
No.
Some sort. We'd have elections.
No.
For a president, area leader.
No.
Like we're.
No. Can I mute Mike? Can I mute him? No, I do not want to see a run and gun USPSA or even a run and gun 3-gun. What I would like is, to me, there's 2 ways you can take this. If you want this to be a test of gear and not a competition, you can have a loose set of rules. You can have, and just say, hey, here it is, go out, shoot it, whatever. But don't keep score. Don't worry about that. But if you're going to keep score and you're going to have prizes, or even if you don't have prizes, a trophy, if you have something, if you're keeping score, I'm kind of the mindset that I would like it to be consistent within the match itself. It doesn't have to be consistent match to match, but it would be nice to have it consistent enough that when I'm done, I know how I did and I know that it was fair. And I think some of it's that even though the sport as a sport or event has been around for a while now in various forms, especially out west, there's growing pains and teething and people figuring things out. But there's just times we get done with these and I know, I'm like, hey, I know that guy didn't do any obstacles and he got the same run time or close to the same run time as me. Yeah, I'm going to do the obstacles because it's fun and I want to challenge myself and do it the way it's intended, but it's kind of a kick in the dick, I mean, I like the things to be fair, and if nothing else, so that I know that if I beat Mike, because I'm trying to beat Mike. If I beat Mike, I want to know that I beat him because I ran better, faster, shot better, not because the scoring just was set up in a way that the RO didn't know and put this in, or whatever it is. Does that make sense? I mean, or anyone else in agreement?
No, it totally makes sense. I mean, I think that each match you'll find a couple more rules that you really want implemented, and then we'll carry those on in the next match, and then there'll be another match where you want a couple more rules, and we'll carry those all together, and eventually we'll get to some sort of governing body and specific
I
rule.
think, I think there's a lot of.
Yeah.
I'm teasing you, but
Yeah.
this is how it goes. This is why USPS, I know you enjoy shitting on USPSA. We could all spend an hour shitting on USPSA, but this is how it got that way. When I teach students, when I teach undergrads and stuff like that, I say my syllabus didn't used to look like this. Every rule has a name. It was some person did this or something, and that's how we end up like this. And this is how you codify games. You want certain levels of fairness, and that's what happens. And you just have to balance out how much you want rules to how much you want to have fun. And at what point do the rules get in the way of your fun, or does the fun get in the way of your rules?
And I agree with that. And you can find that middle ground. Like, there's a lot of outlaw 3-gun. All these little rule sets that are different, and they're a lot the same, but they do these things differently. But generally, if you go to a 3-gun match that's using a written rule set, it's going to be fair. It's going to be scored fair. Maybe different than this other one, but it's just, it doesn't have to be even that extreme. Maybe not a written rule book, but it would be nice to know that whoever I beat because I put in the work and got it done, and not just because someone scored this really weird and it just happened to be that way. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Mike, or if you just want me to be the bad guy in this. I'm fine with that.
No, I mean, I'm not going to name names or anything, but I've had a fairly large match where, everyone was like, "Hey, look, Mike got first, came over, got a bunch of congratulations," and 10 minutes later, it was like, "Yeah, nope, you got second." So, I don't want to sound like a complainer, but I do think there's room for improvement on the scoring as a body. I know that, like Matt Stennett at Legion, he is probably one of the MDs that has perfected the scoring system the most. But I've also watched him go and slave over his spreadsheets for like an hour and a half or 2 hours after the results are in to make sure they're right. So there's definitely some improvement that could be made, and I don't even know if that's so much the MDs, or if we just as a community need to get together and ask practice corps if we can come up with something a little bit more geared towards running gun. I think they're running kind of a modified system that the practice corps had said could work for this, but is definitely not ideal. So I don't think we need the governing bodies and all that fun stuff, but there's room for improvement. But there is everywhere. And ultimately, you got to be out there to have fun. So,
yeah, I agree with that. And I don't want to make this sound like this is a Guardian thing, because they did a great job. It was a great match. Some of this has just been something I've been wanting to mention, because it's it seems like every run and gun I go to, there's always something where I'm just like, how did that happen? Or why isn't that scored that way? Or like I said, I know that guy didn't do any obstacles and he's got the same score as this guy who did. I mean, there's just some stuff that maybe it could be improved. So, and I saw a couple things at Guardian that I thought, hey, the little cards, there's a lot of room for error there, whether it's intentional or accidental. So maybe that's something to improve next year. I don't know. I would definitely be going back. Hopefully I can RO next year again. I kind of did half this match this year, but I do like helping out, and it was a fun match. Those guys do an awesome job. So,
and Mark's going to fly down.
Yes, we're going to get Mark down there.
Yes.
So, as a wrap up, I'll kind of speak my piece, and then we'll let Mike and Mark, if he's got anything to say. But I had an awesome time. It looks like it's probably the highest match finish I've had at a run and gun, and partially from just putting in the work with the cardio. I've always had good shoot scores. I think I was 6th or 7th in shooting, and it's nice that I'm able to keep that shoot score and kind of bump up my run time a little bit. I've got a lot of work to do on that still, but yeah, I thought it was this low round count. I let me look this up real quick. I shot 55 rifle and 63 pistol. Now 63 pistols because even with a red dot I still suck at pistol, and I probably had more makeup shots than I should have, but that for a low round count, man, it was a really good challenging match. So 7 stages and that kind of round count. So the MDs did an awesome job of challenging you, but keeping the round count to a COVID ammo scare level. And really they could have added more targets, and it wouldn't have been any better. It was perfect the way it was. So I thought they did a great job. I'm looking forward to next year. So Mike, you want to close out?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the MDs. I think they did a good job in creating a course that was challenging. And honestly, even if it wasn't an ammo scare, I don't really feel like that you needed a whole bunch of more rounds to have fun.
Nope, I
That's
agree.
one of the things that 3-gun suffers is a lot of people think that you got to go out and have a high round count to have fun. And Guardian's matured. The match directors obviously matured and took some lessons away from last year. And I cannot wait for Guardian 3.0. This was an absolute blast, and it was an absolutely fun time seeing the Running Gun family and hanging out with them. So if you want to get out, find a community of great like-minded shooters that is incredibly supportive, I highly recommend the Running Gun community.
It was missing one thing though, Mike. Do you know what that was? Jimmy Nutt was not there.
Yep. No Jimmy Nutt, but hopefully we'll get a good dose of him later this year.
Yeah, that cast a little bit of a cloud over the event. Mark, you got anything you want to ask or kind of toss in there?
Yeah. My last comment is if you've made it 75 minutes into this podcast or video and you're still listening, please tell us what we can do to make this better. Do you want them shorter, longer, different content, different format? Help us help you. Help us make this better. Do it on Facebook, do it on YouTube, do it in private messages, whatever it takes. Help us make this better. We enjoy doing this, but we want to do it for you guys as well. So please let us know what we can do to make this better for you.
That's great. Yeah. I guess aren't you supposed to say like and subscribe? Hit the like button.
Don't
in
subscribe.
One of these.
Don't like. We don't want that. We want to be. We're underground. We're not on the mainstream. Keep this on the down low, but help us make it better for the in group.
I agree. And if you have questions, like we're not the be all experts. I mean, Mike wins matches. Me and Mark just show up and usually drive him there. But we've been around these sports long enough that we can give you a pretty good direction on how to get better about things and how to perform or what we see wrong or that kind of thing. So if you've got questions, ask them because we like talking about this and we like helping people. So yeah. Thank you guys for staying tuned here, and we'll have another episode here before long. Thanks.